So I think we're live and my audio is working this time. Give me 1 second. All right. All right, so the point of this one, if you're following along kind of in my series here, I was using Hangfire to do some background work from background tasks. I also use Core Middleware to, like I did another implementation of it, and in the mix of those two, I did two kind of refactors using eShop on Web, which I have in my repo here, of the changes, kind of the changes I've made into them. I think that's what it was called. What the heck is it called? eShop on Web. So my changes are in here related to that stuff. So I'm gonna put that aside for a little bit. What I'm gonna do now is I've created a new repo and I randomly gave it this project a name called Luigi. But the idea is really I wanna spend some time kind of creating a message pipeline and a message dispatcher. So if you're familiar with something like ASP.NET Core, like specifically related to how middleware works, it's basically a pipeline where you have kind of one middleware handle the request, do something with it, pass it on to the next piece of middleware, which it's unaware of what it is, but it just calls the next middleware, and then so forth, and then the returns all come all the way back up. What that allows you to do is have middleware kind of short circuit. It can fulfill kind of populate other things a part of the request, add to the response. And the benefit of this, especially for a request, when we're talking about, say, like commands or queries or events, is it just allows you to separate having different basically pieces of the pipeline handle different responsibilities. So when you're using something like Hangfire to do background jobs, background tasks, they can get unwieldy if you're just using kind of straight Hangfire out of the box with how it serializes your expression for what you want to call. There's some limitations in my opinion there, and again, I think it just get a little unwieldy. So for just kind of exercise purposes, I'm going to create this project. I've done this probably 3 different times now for actual work that I can't expose with this, but this can kind of be my reinvention of what I've done before. So I just want to touch again on middleware. So again, that you can think of how this pipeline works. The idea basically is you have a request and you have your first piece of middleware where it can call next, which we'll call the second middleware. And do whatever it needs to do, and it potentially calls next, does some logic, calls the next middleware, which if there is none at that point is basically just the subbed out, doesn't do anything, and then all the returns flow all the way back to whatever the dispatcher was, which in my case is going to be Luigi, which will hand off the response to ultimately the caller of that request. Now again, this could, if you have these 3 pieces of middleware, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll reach all the way to the end. You could be short-circuiting here and not calling next, which then would not call the third middleware. So again, if you're familiar with ASP.NET Core, this is familiar. Especially if you've written middleware, if you're familiar with the MediatR project by Jimmy Bogard, it doesn't work exactly like this, but you can think of MediatR in the same vein as kind of a request response dispatcher. And the way that he's kind of implemented this concept of kind of handing off a request to multiple handlers is through the decorator pattern, which basically specify here's the request I want and here's what's going to be calling before and after it, and then you can kind of wrap them. So that's what I'm going to kind of work on. So in this particular stream, really what I'm after is I'm going to kind of think about just kind of code here what I think some of this API is going to look like. So everything again is going to be on my GitHub of what I'm going to be pushing here. So you can kind of see as this goes, and if you want to make suggestions or send a PR, by all means. So the first thing I'm going to do is I just want to play around with what I think this API is going to look like. So if I have a dispatcher, what would I think of this is going to look like? So there's going to be different ways of this, and this might get split up, but the first thing I'm going to deal with is an actual request. Now, in something like MediatR, or I guess we'll use MediatR as the example, you would have an I request. Now the thing with this though is that I want this built not necessarily for commands and queries, but as well as notifications. So in MediatR, they have the concept of exactly that, in a notification. So I'll probably have various forms of this where, I mean, ultimately they all end up being messages to me. So I got to think of something that has a response, like a query, a command that may not have a response, and an event that won't have a response that will be handled by multiple handlers. So I'm probably gonna have something like a request that would probably have a response, as well as let's do this for the sake of clarity right now. I'm going to have a command that may not have anything in a query. The only problem is that generally, yeah, command's not going to mutate state, but there are some weird situations that you want to return a value. Generally you don't, but it's useful if you know everything ahead of time that you're sending to this. But so what would this something like this look like? I'm going to just let's take a query out. Let's get rid of this. Let's just do our request for the beginning, because request response is a little bit different. So let's say we're going to do a T response. And we're going to take an I request of T response request. And let's add some usings. So when we call dispatch with our request of T response, we're going to get back a T response, and very likely this is all going to be async. I'm not going to suffix these with the async keyword, hot topic, but I'm not going to do it because I'm not making any sync versions. So all right, so if we have a dispatch, what would it look like if we were just had a regular request? What would it look like if we had an event? Oops. So what would that look like? That would look like our dispatcher, the basics of it. So now the second piece to this, is we actually got to create actually need to, let's call this dispatch for now. Move these around after. Like you do with ASP.NET Core, you actually have your application builder, I think is what it is, and that's what actually you're defining your middleware in. So we're basically going to need something to create our pipeline. So what would that actually look like? And the gist of this would be, it probably looks something like, just for kind of pseudocode here, it would probably look like something like builder dot we'll call this, I mean, you to have your type here like just kind of like where you normally do, you like use, I guess it'd be something like similar to that. If you're going based off of the kind of middleware idea, you'd have like use pipe, and you'd give it basically all the different pipes in order that you wanted for a particular request, etc. So it'd be something like that. So what would that look like if we had this would not be asynchronous, because this is basically just registering. So we would have something like use pipe, and what would that look like? We could have we would need a handler for this thing first, so let's call it tpipe. What would that look like? So see. So for implementing, when we actually get a request, we're going to have something like some handle message of I request a response request. So when we dispatch it, ultimately we are going to call this. So this is actually, we won't call this a request because this is going to be call this our iPipe to response. And let's just deal with requests for right now with a response, just this one. Simplify things. So that's what that's going to look like. Oops. So we're going to use pipe, we're going to tell it a type. And what we're probably going to do in our implementation here is just record all these usages. Like when we add this type, we'll probably add it to some collection so we know all the types that we need to record. So use pipe, use pipe. All right. So the only other piece to this is we need to know when we dispatch for which request are we going to be working on here. Let's just look at this, what this would look like. See what this would look like. So we got this list of pipes that we're going to record. So that would look something like. So we're just going to take the T pipe. We're basically going to add our types to this. So that's what that would look like. And then what we would do here, say this was our actual handler, we'd have something like new, okay. We would have a new instance of this pipeline builder, and we would call use pipe, and we just add types to it. All right, so what we got here? I don't know what's complaining about. Oh, it's updating never used. All right, so we're getting our list of pipes, and then our actual implementation of our dispatcher is going to need the pipeline builder to get out these types so that it can iterate over them, construct them using like Microsoft's extensions dependency injection we'll probably use, the service collection, like the service provider there, to construct these, and then basically just execute them. So how else would that look like right now? So let's add new project. Named it that. Weird. All right, so let's start getting into this guy. And then let's look at this again. What would our dispatcher actually look like? Actually, let's get rid of these right now because we don't really care. Do this simplest version first here. All right, so we're gonna have our dispatcher, which is where we would call like something similar, like wherever you actually want to invoke something. So this could be like in your controller action. Pretty much anywhere. Well, you'll see where I'm going further with this is because this would be something similar that you would use for, in the same vein as MediatR, a lot of people would probably use this, but going beyond that, where we could start tying this into persistence or other type of kind of invoking from storage, persistent storage. So whether that be like Hangfire or even like when I was looking at Core Middleware, if storage was added into that, but this could be an extension to that to kind of add this functionality, mainly just kind of this pipeline functionality. So, all right, let's keep going here. I don't know how long I've been streaming for. I didn't want to make this too long, but I'm pretty much, the plan is to build this entire thing out, streaming it. So let's see. All right, so what do I want this thing to do? I want to use pipe. I want a pipe to have a handle method. And I need to get everything out of here. So what's that going to look like? I just want to have, do I want to expose this as a public? What would that be like if I did? If I did that, then we'd have this. Just so we could expose the pipes. All right, my builder is new. Builder. I got a reference here. All right. All right, so let's say let's bomb this thing out here. So let's create a fake pipe. What would this look like? Let's do test request. So it's going to be an iRequest of string, I guess. Won't do anything. And then we'll have a test. I don't need these headphones. Do a test. Pipe is iPipe. iRequest string. Actually, we want this to be this. Of string. Actually, we don't, oops, we don't need that at all. Oh, I see. Our pipe's gonna actually be to response. So I want this to be the test request. It's gonna have to be something like this. It's gonna have to be something like this. We're gonna have to have a different pipe. We're gonna have to have a T request and T response. Because this is how I'm going to resolve it with this. So all right, I'm going to back this up a little bit because I don't think I actually want to do this. I'm going to take this even farther from the beginning. So I think the thing that I don't want to do here is, if you think about, I'm thinking too much about MediatR. I got to stop doing that. I got to think more about kind of middleware in an HTTP context, because that's the thing that ultimately you have access to through each piece of the middleware. That essentially contains the request and the response. So I think what I'm going to do here is, and then this is what I've done before, let's create a pipe context that's going to have a T response, a T request, and a T response. And so we'll make So actually, what I'm gonna pass through isn't a request. I'm actually gonna pass in a pipe context. So this would be similar to the HTTP context, but we're gonna call this the pipe context. And we're actually not gonna return anything here because we don't need to, because the response is gonna be in the context itself. What is this complaining about? Oh, okay. I need request response. All right. This looks more like something useful. And then, all right, so then our dispatcher is going to take in still an iRequest response. And then we're going to have to figure out what which pipeline builder has it. So pipeline builder is going to be basically per per request response here. I gotta think about that still a little bit more here. Oops. I don't know why it's doing that. Pass those from here to here. So our pipe, change this again. This is going to be something like this now. So we have this pipe context. It's going to have the request response. Let this throw right now. So it's going to have something like, in our case, this test request doesn't have anything in it, but let's put something in it just so you can see how this starts to phase out here. Let's say we got a GUID called, I don't know, customer ID. Now you can start seeing that, how this is going to start looking, where you can actually get the customer ID for the request. And then our pipeline, our response, if we wanted to do something, say we fetched something from the database, we'd have our pipe context response equals hello world. This actually got to be writable, so let's do that. Let's make this changeable too. All right. So our pipeline builder is going to be test request string. All right, so we have this pipeline builder. Shouldly. Let me add shouldly to this. Should be. It's going to give me a version here. Or not. Pre-release, let's go down. Hell, why not? It's quite old. All right. Get shouldly installed here. Let's say should be 1. add some of this stuff. All right, it was 0. That makes sense. Let's add our types. All right. So what else are we going to add to this thing? Do we want it to dedupe? Should this be a hash set to dedupe them? I don't even know. Probably not. I don't think I care about that too much. So what should we do here? Let's look at our dispatcher a little bit more. So that's our pipeline builder. It's basically just registrations for the types of the different pipelines, these. We got our pipeline context. Let's go back to the dispatcher. So the dispatcher now, we would need to, what is this thing gonna look like? So this is going to need to, this is going to need to use the, I'm going to change this around because I'm going to build this out, but just for now, we'll say this is going to take the iService provider. Because what we're going to do when we dispatch, we're going to need to get that particular type. We're going to need to get the dispatcher of, like the iDispatcher of this T-request, T-response. Because that is what our builder looks like. We need one of these. So D-request, T-response. Okay, so that's going to be, oops, I don't want the dispatcher, I want the pipe builder. Okay, and then that's gonna have to change because I need, oh, that's fine. Get service doesn't have type parameters, what's it talking about? Actually, we don't want this to have, actually we will have this have a response because we're going to get it from the context. So builder, iterate over pipes, and then at this point I could also use the service provider to get service of pipe, because this is going to be a type. This is going to be a pipe of, what do we call this thing again? Or I pipes T request T response. Call this pipe type. Actually, now we need a context in here. So what is it going to take? It takes in our request. Our request of T response. Oh. Yeah, I don't think we're going to pass in a response, actually. We're just only going to pass in the request. The response, we don't know what this is going to be. I can make it default of whatever this is. We could do that. We could do that, I guess. Just default it. I request to response is not... getting somewhere, I think, here. So it's gonna be the pipe context, then we're gonna pass that to here. All right. What am I missing here? What didn't it like? Dispatch. I didn't need this. T response. Oh, it's right in the same file. I didn't even realize that. Oops. Do I really need this right here? Why do I need this? This is going to be an iPipe context. I don't even need this. This is going to be an I request of T response. Yeah, so I don't need this at all. Nor would you need the pipe context. You don't need this. I feel like I'm going to regret this here because I feel like I want to know the request. This doesn't feel right. We'll go down this road and then we'll fix it when I realize it doesn't make sense. All right, so when I call handle on the pipe, the next thing I actually want to do at this point is you want to know what the next pipe is. So I'll work that out a little bit and then I'll call it a stream and I'll kick off the next one, which I'll probably do tomorrow. Probably in the middle of the day, kind of around lunch. So what would that look like? So this is going to be a func of task This is going to be a func of task. This is going to be an action of task. Where we'll just call next on it. So that would look like here we would do some logic, and then here we would await next. Why is it complaining about this? Oh, action. What's it complaining about here? Not exactly sure what it's complaining about. Void is not awaitable. Oh, I was right. Func. Why am I thinking action? I don't know why I was thinking that. It's going to return a task, and we're not going to give it anything. The only thing weird, I guess, here is, do we want to pass along, make it pass along the pipe context? I guess if you overwrote it entirely, that'd be useful. So maybe let's do that. So let's do, out of curiosity, let's do that. So that way you had to give it the pipe context. I don't know if that feels weird or not. The benefit of this, I guess, is that it allows you to completely overwrite this pipe context rather than just change the request response. You could overwrite the entire thing. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but see what that feels like anyways. So that's how this API is starting to look. It's kind of all over the place, I get that, but if you're familiar with any of this, it probably makes sense. If you're unfamiliar with it, maybe hopefully you can stick around and as I'm doing this and see more examples here as I go of how this starts shaping out. All right, so that's our test pipe. So let's let me look at the dispatcher again here. So at this point, we were wanting to pass, what do we want? The request and the pipe context. Oh, we were only, yeah, sorry, we were only passing the pipe context and the next one. So this is going to be the next pipe. So what we probably want to do is So, I gotta give it a type of. Is it complaining about that? This should be a type. I don't know what this is complaining about. Actually, let's put async. This we will await something eventually here. What is it complaining about my pipe type? Oh, this is going to be a type, though. I don't know why this is complaining. Cannot resolve. What are you talking about, can't resolve? Builder, pipes, X. Oops. That's our type. Oh, I don't need type of. That's why. Pipe dot. Oh, this was as I pipe T request. T response. Handle. And then here I'm going to pass the pipe context. And then the next pipe. So the next pipe will be so what we're going to do if X, let's actually do if builder dot pipes dot count. So if we're starting at 0. So we're going to make a delegate that's going to take the pipe context, which is this. And then just we'll make it return just the task completed result, I guess. I wonder if I should turn this into a delegate. That'd be easier to look at. Probably won't look any better because it's just gonna be that ultimately. Screw it. So let's do empty pipe doing nothing basically. Equals actually, yeah, so we can do, the next pipe actually is going to be a same thing. We're going to have this be do context equals, oops. Let's do I'm getting into recursion here. Do I just want to give it the next type? Yeah, because this is going to go back up to here. Let's take a look at, oops. This one's calling the next one. Pipe context, and then we're gonna have a func. I'm just trying to wrap this in, calling the pipe. Think about this for a second. All right, and then we can await that. All right, that was quite the stream. I think I'm going to leave it there, and then I'm going to play around with the idea of what I have so far. I think in my next stream I'll get farther in actually creating a test that's going to illustrate calling dispatch. And then I can kind of do this hello world example where I can do the pipe context dot response equals hello world. And we can verify that that's actually happening. And then having multiple pipes where maybe the response gets changed or appended to, etc. All right, so that's where I'm going to leave this one. I'd love your feedback. I should have mentioned that at the very beginning. If there's something you want me to cover more, if you guys want these things edited down, I think I still may do that. I've been blogging more about the stuff that I'm streaming, kind of in a condensed form. So take a eye on that, I guess, or look for that. If obviously these streams, I don't suspect anybody's going to watch an hour of these things, but I'll try to have a condensed version on my blog post covering what I'm actually building here and how to actually use. So probably have another stream tomorrow, kind of covering more of this. It's late at night, so it's a little bit easier in the middle of the day. Keep my thoughts clear, I guess. So I will pick this back up tomorrow.